Hey everyone, and welcome back to the PTG Rail Routes Learning series. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the Gatwick Express Class 460 unit, which was created by Master Key Simulations, and I'm going to be driving a full Gatwick Express run between Gatwick Airport and London Victoria. The scenario that I'm using is a custom created scenario specifically for this video, and I intend to make this scenario available on Steam Workshop, so you will be able to try it out for yourself if you have all of the DLC requirements. We're going to be following the real-life timetable of Train 1 Uniform 89, which is the 16:22 service from Gatwick Airport non-stop through to London Victoria, for a total journey distance of around 26.75 miles. The scenario itself with the timetabling is set in the present day. However, because the Gatwick Express Class 460 units are no longer in service, the time period for the scenario for the AI and player services is set at around 2008 to 2009. As already mentioned, the train that I'm driving on this journey today is the Class 460 electric multiple unit. The Class 460s were built by Alstom at Washwood Heath between 1999 and 2001, and are part of Alstom's Juniper family of units, which also includes the Class 334 and the Class 458. They were in service between 2000 and 2012, and each train is formed of 8 coaches. They have a maximum speed of 100 miles per hour, though the maximum permitted speed on this route is 90 miles per hour, so that will be the top speed we'll get up to on this journey today. And each unit has a power output of 2,700 kilowatts, or 3,620 horsepower. They run on the 750 volts DC third rail electrification system. In 2011, the Department for Transport announced that the Class 460s would be split up, and they will be rebuilt as part of South West Trains' Class 458 fleet, and so this resulted in 36 5-coach Class 458/5 sets. The remaining few coaches were then stripped for spares, and unfortunately scrapped. It was actually a controversial decision to cut up and get rid of the Class 460s, as they were designed for Gatwick Express services, and their replacement at the time, the Class 442, really wasn't suited for express airport runs. Now in the cab of the unit, let's go through the startup procedure here. So the first thing I need to do is turn the master key by pressing Shift and W, and now that I've done that, I need to move the reversing handle to the neutral position and reset the AWS TPWS self-test sequence. Now that that's done, the next thing I'm going to do is set up the headlights into the correct position. So you can see there we've got the head and marker light switch, and if I now press Shift and H, I just need to turn that to the daytime setting, so that's now all correct. The next thing I'm going to do is to turn the instrument light switch on, and I think they only need to be on the dim setting at this time of day. Now here we're going to quickly look at the train's main computer, and what I'm going to do now is first of all enter a service code. So what I need to do here is just, well, I can type in any random number really. In real life you'd be given a specific code that you would need to enter. Let's just do 38271. So I've just clicked on the various numbers there. Now I need to click on the F1 key to enter the service number code. So now you can see we've got the train status there, and we can see different faults and so on. But what I'm now going to set up is the audio announcement system by entering the train's destination code, which will also change the destination display on the outside of the train. So what I need to do here is to click on F2, and now I need to enter code 0092. So now that I've done that, that's for an express service from Gatwick Airport through to London Victoria. If I now press F2, that will enter the train number. And now you can hear the onboard announcements. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the driver reminder appliance by clicking on it, as the signal ahead is no longer displaying a red aspect. And let's just quickly look at some of the cab controls here. So over to the left hand side we've got the combined traction and brake controller, As you can see, it's currently pushed forward away from the off position, indicating that the brakes are applied, and you can see there just to the top, sort of rightish of the screen next to the speedometer, the brake gauges for this unit. So the brake cylinder pressure gauge is the needle on the right hand side. When that's pointing to 0, then the brakes are fully released, and the higher the needle is pointing, then the harder the brakes are applied. Unlike with many units in the UK, the brakes on this unit are not stepped brakes, so I can actually move the handle quite smoothly for some quite precise brake applications. But once you move it to the off position and then pull it towards you, there are 4 power settings. Now if we continue around the cab here, we've got the speedometer there measured in miles per hour, which for some reason goes all of the way up to 140, as this train's certainly not authorised to travel at anywhere near that speed. And in front of us here you can see there's a button that says speed set. So the train was built with a speed set cruise control type system. However, this is actually deactivated by default and is not supposed to be used in service, which does make me question why the speed set was ever put in place in the first place. Now if we continue around the cab here, in front of us there we've got the GSM radio system. Now the GSM radio is not going to be simulated in this scenario because I'm not sure, I need to correct that, sorry. It's not the GSM radio system, it is in fact the CSR radio system. It's the newer units that had the GSM radio system installed. So the GSM radio system I could use, but the CSR radio system as is simulated on this unit, I haven't set it up for this scenario because I've got to place the various track markers for different CSR areas. So CSR stands for Cab Secure Radio. It's not too important in all honesty, it doesn't really do that much and it doesn't add a huge amount to the simulation. So for this scenario, I do apologise that it's not going to be simulated. Now the next thing I need to do here is I need to open the doors. So you can see in front of us there the door controls for the right hand side. If I now click there, I've now opened the doors, and when you stop at a station in this unit you need to remember not just to press T, but you also need to enable the doors by clicking on the button, otherwise the doors won't open and the passengers won't be able to board or alight the train. Now just down in front of us here is the horn control, which is a 2-tone horn controllable with the spacebar and the B key. Now that we've had a look around the cab and had a look at some of the controls and the setup procedure, let's just take another quick look outside the train and then we can depart and head out towards London Victoria. Departing away from Gatwick Airport, the starting speed limit here is 30 miles per hour, with around 26 3/4 miles to go to our next and only stop, which is London Victoria. At this point we're now going to cross over onto the fast lines from the slow lines, so we're currently on the up slow. Now we're going to quickly cross onto the down slow before crossing onto the up fast. And in a moment, as we reach the next point that we cross, the speed limit is going up immediately to 40 miles per hour. You may have seen there that we passed a 40 mile per hour speed post for the junction going right. Now the rear of the train has cleared that speed limit. We can now begin to accelerate towards that. And now we've crossed onto the fast line. The speed limit has gone up to 90 miles per hour. Just experienced a little bit of wheel slip there, you may have heard that in the motor, so I'm just going to cut the power back slightly. I did actually set this scenario in autumn because this train has a full wheel slide simulation. I just thought it would make things a bit more interesting to be able to drive and demonstrate that. We're now coming up on Horley Station. We're also following on this journey a delayed Bognor Regis to London Victoria service, which will give us some adverse signals. And I put that in because it just seems a bit more interesting, and it's also very much more realistic, as I can't ever imagine a journey on this route where you drive all of the way from Gatwick to London Victoria and not see any adverse signals at all. You may have noticed that the train that I'm driving is actually in a special livery, and it's Delta Airlines promotional livery, the Big Apple livery as it's known, promoting flights with Delta Airlines from Gatwick Airport through to New York. We're now coming up on Salford Station on the slow lines on the left hand side. Now that we're at 90 miles per hour, I've just cut the power handle back to notch 2 of power, which should maintain us pretty close to 90 miles per hour, but I will adjust the power settings if necessary to maintain the speed as close to 90 as possible. The next speed change is coming up very shortly, just after we've passed through Earlswood Station, where they drop in the speed limits down to 80 miles per hour. Coming up on the 80 mile per hour speed warning, I've just cut back the power, and you can now see the platforms at Earlswood coming up, so I'm just going to apply some light braking now just to bring our speed down in time for the upcoming 80. And you can see immediately there the wheel slide that's happening with the speedometer going a little bit wild. At Earlswood Station, the platforms on the slow lines are still in use, but on the fast lines they've actually been closed down. I slowed down a little bit too much there, but that's not to worry. The speed limit's now gone down to 80 miles per hour, and we're on a downhill section, which will cause us to gain just a little bit of speed as we head towards Red Hill Tunnel just here. And as we enter Red Hill Tunnel, the speed limit's going back up to 90 miles per hour. Also, just after Earlswood Station there, you may have noticed that the slow lines went off to the left, and now they're going to be away from us for a short time, and then we're going to cross over the slow lines and they'll reappear on the right hand side. So just passed through Red Hill Tunnel, and now we're on an upward gradient of between 1 in 105 and 1 in 111, which will just impede our ability to accelerate very slightly. In a moment the gradient will be levelling out, and then once again, once we reach 90 miles per hour, I'm going to put the power handle back into notch 2. So a while ago I actually made a route guide documentary on the Brighton Main Line, going into quite a lot of detail about the different locations along the route and the history of how the route came to be and so on. And if you're interested in watching that and learning more about the Brighton Main Line, I'm going to post a link to where you can watch the route guide video in the description of this video. We're now crossing the M25 motorway, which is the orbital motorway surrounding London, sometimes known as Britain's biggest car park because of its infamy for rather massive delays at times. We're now entering Quarry Tunnel, which is the second longest tunnel on the Brighton Main Line after Clayton Tunnel near Brighton. We're now passing Star Lane, where the slow lines cross under us to re-emerge on the right-hand side. Coming up on the Covered Way, which is the former Cane Hill Tunnel, which tunnelled under the grounds of the Cane Hill Mental Asylum before the roof of this tunnel was eventually removed. The line now joining us on the left is the branch from Tattenham Corner, which after passing through Reedham Station will dive to pass under the fast and slow lines here before re-emerging on the right hand side and joining with the branch line from Caterham. Now coming up on Purley Station. The next speed change will be a drop in the speed limit down to 60 miles per hour just before South Croydon Station, which will be coming up shortly, and we're going to get a warning for the upcoming 60 mile per hour speed restriction just after we've passed through the next station at Purley Oaks. That warning is 3/4 of a mile from the limit itself, but due to the very slippery rails that we've got on the track today, I'm now putting the power handle into idle just to lose a little bit of speed before we reach that warning. And one of the things I've realised is that with the wheel slide protection affecting the brake cylinder pressure, which will go up and down, we just reached the warning there, so I've now got the brakes on. Sometimes it's actually difficult to see just how hard you've got the brakes applied. In fact, I'm quite surprised that we're not getting as much wheel slide as I was here on the practice runs, and I'm able to slow down a lot quicker than I was earlier. One of the things I found was that I accidentally put the brakes into the emergency setting because the brake gauge was actually swinging very wildly. So I've slowed down to 60 miles per hour here, but I'm actually a little bit too early. But it's better to be too early than too late. It's actually very fortunate that I didn't experience the wheel slide I did earlier, which was making it very difficult to judge the correct braking point. The speed limit's now dropped to 60 miles per hour, and we're now coming up on South Croydon Station. Have a double yellow signal. I'm going to start applying the brakes to bring our speed down a bit. There is also a 45 mile per hour speed restriction coming up, followed by a 30 mile per hour speed restriction as we enter the platform at East Croydon Station. Because this train has wheel slide protection built in, I'm not supposed to actually fan the brakes, but instead I'm supposed to just leave the brakes in their current setting and allow the wheel slide protection system to do its job. Actually there, I should have been going a little slower. If that signal ahead had been displaying a red aspect, I may have needed to use an emergency brake setting, so I didn't quite approach that signal, should I say, at the correct speed. So we've got a 30 mile per hour speed restriction now as I enter East Croydon's platform. I need to assume that the signal at the end of the platform is displaying a red aspect until I can see otherwise. So we do have a single yellow signal there. I can bring our speed up very slightly. It's now just jumped up to double yellow, so I can bring the speed up a little more. But of course I do still have to drive with caution. The speed limit here is now going up to 45 miles per hour, and I can be sure that the rear of the train has passed the speed post as I reach the point just coming up. Just to the north of East Croydon Station here, the lines going off just to the right hand side. In the middle there are the lines towards Norwood Junction and London Bridge, with the slow lines on the far right where you can currently see the Class 377 unit coming down the gradient there. So the speed limit has now gone up to 60 miles per hour. Just passed through Selhurst Station, and the speed limit is now going up further towards 70 miles per hour. At 70 miles per hour, I need to go between notches 1 and 2 of power to try and maintain the speed. I'm now coming up on Thornton Heath Station, a station that I've travelled to many times. So I ended up just slightly over the speed limit there, so just applied light braking to bring us back down to 70. Not quite sure why that was. I think I should have probably dropped to notch 1 of power slightly sooner there. passing Norbury Station. At this point we are under a double yellow signal, and I'm going to apply some light braking just to start bringing our speed down a little. At the next station, Streatham Common, there's actually some very close signal sections, and if you're not careful you can easily end up having a SPAD, or signal passed at danger. Going to continue to brake as that signal was double yellow. The next signal here looks like it's currently displaying a single yellow aspect, with the following signal very close behind. Looks like that signal might now have jumped to a double yellow aspect, so I don't need to slow down quite as much, and in fact I can now start to bring our speed up a little. The speed limit here is now dropping to 60 miles per hour. Once we reach 60 miles per hour, I need to be in roughly notch 1 of power to try and maintain the speed. Now coming up on Balham Station. I've just idled the power at this point, as shortly after Balham Station we're going to be on a downhill gradient towards Wandsworth Common Station of 1 in 94. I'm going to need to use a little bit of braking to try and control the speed here. We're now passing Wandsworth Common Station. At this point I'm just allowing the train to coast, as I can see that the signal ahead is displaying a double yellow aspect. As we pass the signal, if it doesn't change, then I'm going to start using the brakes to bring our speed down and ensure that we can stop in time for any potential red signals. can now see that our signal ahead is displaying a red aspect, so I'm now bringing our speed down so that we can stop in time for that signal. Of course, I want to really try and crawl towards it so I don't have to actually stop the train if I can help it. So hopefully the signal will jump up to a single yellow aspect before I reach it. But in the meantime, I'm just going to slow down now enough so that I can stop easily. And in fact, it's now just jumped up to a single yellow. So I can now give us a little bit of power to bring our speed up. I now have to assume that the signal at the end of the platform at Clapham Junction is displaying a red aspect until I can see otherwise, unless the signal jumps to double yellow before we pass it. Which unfortunately it didn't, so I've now got to drive with caution through Clapham Junction station. So the Southwestern Main Line has now joined us on the left hand side, and we'll be following it for a short time before we diverge away and then cross over it on a bridge. Unfortunately here the frame rate does drop quite a bit. There's an awful lot of AI trains here at Clapham Junction. Clapham Junction is in fact Britain's busiest railway station by train numbers, with thousands of trains passing through here each day, and at peak times up to 180 trains an hour pass through the platforms at Clapham Junction station, of which 117 of these trains stop. Creating this scenario, it took me about 6 hours to actually create. I actually had to add 51 AI trains over the course of just this 30 to 35 minute journey, so the traffic pattern is certainly very intense. And doing the traffic in the Clapham Junction area is the fiddliest of all, I think. The speed limit will soon be dropping down to 45 miles per hour. So I'm bringing our speed up towards that, though keeping a close eye on the signals ahead. So we've now reached the 45 mile per hour speed zone. I'm currently coasting at 45, though I will increase the power in a moment to try and maintain the speed as we start climbing here. We're going to be on quite a steep 1 in 92 gradient as we climb up this hill. The gradient here is now levelling out, so I'm now cutting the power back to ensure that we don't end up breaking the speed limit. And in a moment now we're going to be crossing over the Southwestern Main Line tracks, which go into London Waterloo. Just ahead of us you can see Battersea Power Station, and we're now coming up on Battersea Park Station. Battersea Power Station's actually changed, or the area around it's changed quite a lot today, and you can't really see the power station very well from the railway tracks. In a moment we're going to be crossing over the River Thames, and then at the other end of the bridge as we cross the River Thames the speed limit will be dropping to 40 miles per hour. Though right now we're under a single yellow signal and I can see the red signal ahead, so I'm now braking to slow down so that we can stop in time for that signal. Once again, I'm trying to crawl to the signal in the hopes that we won't have to stop, but I believe that we might have to here, as there's some slight congestion at London Victoria Station, and in the scenario editor it's very difficult to get it to accept the pathing of the high number of AI trains required for a realistic scenario on this route. So now we're going to be stuck at this red signal until the traffic ahead has cleared, and then hopefully we'll be able to move forward towards London Victoria Station. So the signal ahead's just cleared to a single yellow aspect, so I can now start the train moving here. The speed limit's dropping to 40 miles per hour, and in a fifth of a mile is dropping further down to 20 miles per hour around the area of the next signal. We're also about to start on a 1 in 61 downward gradient. So I've just shut off the power now to allow the train to coast on this downward gradient, and I'm also preparing to stop at the next signal, which is coming up in a moment just ahead. The next signal has now just cleared for us, and we've now got the platform indicator ahead, which means that we are now cleared into London Victoria Station. I'm just going to allow the train to coast up towards 20 miles per hour at this point, and then we'll use the brakes if we reach 20, just to ensure that we don't break the speed limit. As we're now entering the platform, I'm going to apply the brakes to bring our speed down. I'm going to get down now towards 10 miles per hour, and then once we've reached 10 miles per hour, I'm going to release the brakes and just gradually sort of coast up into the platform. I want to be down to no more than 5 miles per hour, around 1 coach length away from the buffers. I'm aiming to stop just as the buffer stops disappear here on the driver's window. and so this should be about the correct stopping point. So here we are, arrival at London Victoria. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. For the latest channel updates, you can find me on Facebook, and I've put the link to my Facebook page in the video description. If you'd like to sponsor this channel on Patreon, then please visit my Patreon page for more information. Once again, link in the description. And finally, please don't forget that this scenario will be available on Steam Workshop, as long as Steam Workshop will allow me to upload it, which I think it should. And so I'm also going to post the workshop link in the video description, along with the London to Brighton route guide documentary link. Once again, thank you for watching.